Okay, everybody, I'd like to call to order on January 6, 2026 at 6 o'clock p.m. the Canton Trustees Study Session. We all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, and Happy New Year, everybody. Okay, so do we need a roll call? Oh, good, study session.
Wouldn't do that.
Adoption of agenda. Okay, so today we are going to start, before we do the study session, we're going to do a closed session to discuss the pending litigation of Baker versus Canton Township.
Madam Supervisor, I move that the board go into closed session for the purposes of consulting its attorney regarding settlement strategy in the case of Baker v. Canton.
Support.
Motion made by Clerk Seeger, supported by Trustee Brudzinski. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Do we have to do that roll call one at a time because it's a closed session?
Oh, is this one a required roll call?
I think we.
Segrist, aye.
were-
Foster.
Aye. Warninski, aye.
Ansari, aye.
Slavens, aye.
Graham Hudek, aye. Okay, we're going to go into closed session and we will be right back. Right. Oh, I guess, can I have a motion to come back from closed session?
So moved.
Support.
Motion made by Seeger, supported by Trustee Foster. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. We are back. Great, thank you. Well, the next item on the agenda is the Canton Township broadband study. And we will be led by our esteemed colleagues here. So we have Patrick Sloan and Dave Norman and Victor and Mr. Bannock. And do you want to introduce, everybody knows here for our broadband study. Victor, do you want to kick us off and kind of give an overview of what we were looking at?
Okay. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here today. If the board will remember, over the past, I believe, a year and some months ago, the board approved that we should engage the services of a consultant with regards to the broadband situation in Canton. We did that, and we were able to bring on board Urban Wireless, and we were fortunate as well to bring Urban Wireless because Doug, who heads the services of Urban Wireless, also lives in Canton. And so the pain that we bear is also his pain. And so we initiated that project through Urban Wireless, started the process of reviewing the existing data sets that we had at the time, and also moving forward from there. And it was very fast for us in the sense that we were able to move from the conventional broadband also to the wireless arena. And so today, Doug is going to give us some report based on all the work that they've been doing with the committee, and that will inform the rest of our discussion as we try to map out where we go from here based on the challenges that we've been facing here in Canton Township as regards to all things broadband and wireless communication. So I'll turn it over to Doug and his team to bring us up to date. Thank you.
Thank you, Victor. Thank you to the board for giving us the opportunity to present this report to you. With me tonight is my colleague, Steve Gerhardt. Together, we've been engaged with the township over the past year to, as Victor said, study the broadband situation and wireless infrastructure in the township and make recommendations as to where we go from here and to move forward with the primary goal of trying to make Canton more tech-friendly, shall I say, with a couple of objectives in mind in particular related to things like the main and that sort of thing. I'll get more into that here in a moment. So as I pointed out, we've been at this for a little over a year now, We started out and we were tasked with reviewing and mapping existing broadband infrastructure throughout the township. This includes cable and fiber. We were tasked also with reviewing and mapping of existing wireless infrastructure, developing a GIS database to show where the fiber, cable, wireless infrastructure is located in the township, meeting with stakeholders throughout the township to discuss what wireless and broadband needs are and what the wishes are. Regular meeting with folks like you to update what our findings are and make recommendations. Today, reporting on where we're at today. We still have work to do, but we wanted to get some report into the hands of everyone here so we can really discuss what the next steps will be. And then at the end of it, when we were first hired, it was primarily just dealing with fiber/broadband. However, it's kind of expanded into dealing with, working with the planning department on its wireless ordinance and the issues that have arisen with a number of wireless providers wanting to come and build more infrastructure in the township. So with that in mind, we've kind of sprung from that into a really large review and engagement, working with the planning department and stakeholders within the wireless industry, tower companies, wireless providers who are interested in getting here to the township. So to date, so far, we've completed the mapping. We've mapped all the fiber, and we will show you the maps when we're through the slide presentation here. We've already mapped all the broadband infrastructure, the broadband cable and things of that nature, as well as wireless infrastructure. We've developed through our engineering firm, Spicer Engineering, they've developed the GIS database, which we have now shared with your GIS team, and you have it in your system, I believe. I believe, Joe, you've added some layers to it for your own purposes, like utilities and things of that nature. Or David, I'm sorry. I'm looking at Joe here, and I'm thinking, sorry about that. We've also worked with, again, like I said, I've worked with Patrick extensively on reviewing the revised zoning ordinance that's hopefully be coming to you folks here in the not too distant future. We've consulted with Ripple Fiber, who is a new player in the fiber business here in the township. I know some of you are probably aware of some of the, shall I say, issues that occurred when they first came into town, but I think a lot of those have gotten resolved, and I think they are moving throughout the township now to get their assets in place, and I believe get their first customers online here in the township here soon if they haven't done it already, which I should say too, not that this is critical to the discussion, they suffered a loss this past couple months. The gentleman that you folks dealt with, Jason Fajerski, he passed away suddenly and right before Thanksgiving, I guess.
Right.
We'll have, if they haven't already made contact, they will probably have someone new representative here in the township working with you folks. We've also worked with wireless carriers and the tower developers, as I said, who are interested in coming here. We've kind of fended them off a little bit from coming at the township and threatening litigation and that sort of thing, which they're prone to do. But we kind of held them at bay on them understanding that we are working on something and facilitating a means to make it more conducive to develop infrastructure in the township. So I'm going to spend just a short amount of time on the fiber and cable situation. The primary part of this discussion tonight is going to be more focused on the wireless part, but I do want to talk a little bit about our findings on cable and fiber. There's two major players for internet providers in Canton: Comcast/Xfinity, AT&T, WOW. We discovered that cable/copper is by far the most prevalent internet infrastructure in the township to most residential areas. There are some of the newer subdivisions that have fiber, but most of it is copper. But we know for a fact that AT&T and Comcast both are undertaking steps to try and maybe upgrade that infrastructure. It's not super prevalent, at least not here in the township yet, but it is happening. We have found that fiber is most prevalent along the major thoroughfares here in the township, along Michigan Avenue, along Ford Road, up and down Haggerty, up and down Morton Taylor Road. Particularly along Michigan Avenue and Ford Road, what the fiber is, and there's probably, what, half a dozen, Steve, companies that have fiber in those right-of-ways. It's primarily what they call long-haul fiber. In other words, they're running fiber for their data centers that may be located in Southfield or Detroit or whatever, and they run out elsewhere in the state, whether they have a data center in Lansing, other side of the state, all of that sort of thing. But off that long-haul fiber, they can peel strands off for development that might occur along Michigan Avenue or along Ford Road or whatever. So there is plenty of fiber along those routes to facilitate future development along the main, if that's what happens, promote business, smart city type applications, that sort of thing. There's also two new fiber companies / internet providers that have come into the marketplace here. Ripple, which we know about, and there's another one that's come to our attention called Easy Fiber. Now, we've not made contact with them yet, but we wanted to get a handle on, meet with them and bring them to you folks too, so that we kind of develop the same kind of rapport that we developed with Ripple. So everyone can play nice in the sandbox together. I mean, I know they came in, they applied for their permits with the county, which in turn got sent to our DPS, and there is concern about interference with water, electric, all those utilities and that sort of thing. So we are endeavoring to get in contact with Easy and get them to meet with us just to discuss plans and meet people and that sort of thing.
Doug, if you want, you can sit down here at the microphone if it's easier.
Oh, that's right, because I can see my slides.
Oh, okay, because they're recording it on cable.
Yep.
And so you have to do the microphone a lot,
Yep,
unfortunately.
I
Sorry.
should know that because
Yeah, thank you, thanks.
That's your first rodeo.
So that's kind of in a real small nutshell what's going on with the cable and fiber situation in Canton. We're still going to continue to delve into that a little bit and see what else is on the horizon with the fiber companies. But as I said, we've kind of gotten off the path a little bit and started discussing the wireless opportunities here in the township. And primarily is driven because, as I said, we know of 3 wireless providers that are chomping at the bit to build sites in the township. And I know Patrick gets bombarded with inquiries and all that sort of thing. So it made sense to address this now.
We also have AT&T for a while was telling its customers they had bad reception because we wouldn't allow them to put towers up everywhere, which wasn't true also. So we had to call AT&T and we had a meeting with them, and that I haven't gotten any complaints about that in a while, but.
I did want to mention that one of the carriers, the current carriers that are providing broadband to the township is WOW. They were just purchased, and that's as of one day's notice in the news, $1.5 billion by private equity. They're taking WOW private rather than being a publicly traded company. We believe, and I think this is part of our responsibility to the township, is to make you aware when mergers and acquisitions are taking place. We believe this is only the beginning of the consolidation of a lot of these companies with private equity coming into play. A lot of the data centers, a lot of the internet service providers, and a lot of the networks are being funded by private equity. So that may or may not have an impact to this. We believe that through mergers and acquisitions, you're going to see a consolidation in the market as it has with cellular. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I anticipate you see companies like Ripple coming in, Easy, they will probably be acquired at some point, just like what happened with the wireless carriers. I mean, there used to be many wireless carriers, and now we're down to 3 major ones. Anyway, going back into what our findings have been so far in the wireless infrastructure, existing wireless facilities as of last summer when we did the actual inventory, in and around Canton, there's about 19 macro cell sites. And a macro cell site, just so you know, it can be a tower, it can be a rooftop installation, it can be something like what they call a stealth installation. And the best example of that around here is the clock tower at the Cadillac dealership in Plymouth Township over on Ann Arbor Road. That's one of the 19 that I'm referring to here. And there's approximately, at that time, there were approximately 15 to 19 small cells in the township. And those are primarily located along county right-of-ways. And the reason that, and they're primarily Verizon installations, but I think there's AT&T ones also. The reason they're on the county right-of-ways is because they can just go to the county based on the state law and get a permit and put their facilities up on a utility pole in the county right-of-way. And the only real recourse we have is to review them to make sure they're not interfering with any of our infrastructure or some horrible aesthetic design. But those are the ones you see mostly on utility poles. You'll see them along Haggerty Road, you'll see them on Morton Taylor, you'll see them on Sheldon. Not so much on, you won't see them on Ford Road, you won't see them on Michigan Avenue. Going back to the macro sites real quick, you also notice too that there were some used to be on the electric transmission towers. And there are still some, but they are going away a little bit because the wireless carriers have discovered that, one, they're costly to maintain and install, and two, the towers themselves are not really structurally made to include that type of equipment, particularly the heavy equipment that the wireless carriers are using now. Maintenance is a headache because ITC and DTE have such stringent maintenance requirements as far as accessing those sites and that sort of thing. So they're finding that it's more beneficial for them to get off of those towers and go on a tower or a rooftop or whatever the case may be. So recent example, there used to be one over here on Canton Center by the right across the street from the post office, and that one's since been removed. There's another one over in Haggerty next to the Village Green Apartments, or what used to be called Village Green Apartments, and that one's been removed as well. As far as towers go, actually monopoles / wireless towers, most of them have been located here in the industrial areas of Canton. The reason for that is the way our current zoning ordinance directs them to go in industrial areas. Special use in the industrial areas, which is not uncommon. I mean, in early days of wireless, that worked. Cities didn't want towers in their residential areas. They wanted one in their commercial areas, so they pushed them out to the industrial areas. And when networks were first getting built out, that was fine because they didn't need that many towers. I like to tell the story every now and then that when I first got into business, when one of my former bosses first got into business back in the 80s, he was told that they'd only ever need 9 towers in Michigan. Well,
Jeez.
Verizon by itself has about 2,000 cell sites in Michigan, so you know where that went. There are a number of towers on the periphery of the township, also in industrial areas, but some in commercial areas, like the clock tower, for example. And as I mentioned, a few of them are located on the transmission towers. The rooftop installations are along Ford Road. There's one on top of the Verizon store on Ford Road. There's one on top of the office building that's at Ford and Lily Road, Willow Plaza, I believe it's called. And then there's one on top of these senior apartment buildings behind Mexican Fiesta on Ford Road. Like I said, the early days of wireless allowed for the current zoning, allowed for what we currently allow in the township as far as towers being built in industrial areas. Today, the technology's changed, the needs have changed. Everyone has multiple wireless devices. It's not just about coverage. Maps will show you later that show coverage in the township. You'll see Canton is pretty well covered as far as wireless service goes. More capacity driven, the more devices you have being used in a given area at a given time puts an extreme strain on the network. And with what people cutting the cord now and people going to getting their broadband wirelessly, it requires getting signal into more residential type areas, commercial areas, things of that nature. It requires getting the RF closer to the needs of the people. And like I said too, with most homes have at least 5 to 6 wireless devices by themselves. If you have somebody using every one of those devices at a given time, leads to the network getting extremely bogged down. So the wireless carriers need to get more signal, more sites in the area to offload some of that traffic. Again, that's capacity driven, it's customer driven. Plus with all the multiple uses now that are being used for wireless, public safety uses, like I said, the broadband / cord cutters, businesses are using wireless with, with their cashier services and other things like but when you point of sale type applications. So there's so many different uses now for wireless that it makes sense they are going to need to fill out the infrastructure for wireless. With that in mind, it behooves the township and municipalities to make it more conducive to develop wireless infrastructure in the community. One of the things that we recommend now, and has already been in the process through the planning department, is revising the current wireless ordinance. Patrick's team has spent months working on this. It's made it much more detailed than what the current wireless ordinance is, and allows for much more freedom to develop wireless infrastructure in the township. As I said, the current ordinance allows for towers as a special land use in industrial areas. The revised ordinance, and Patrick, you correct me if I'm wrong, is going to allow for towers in all zoning districts subject to special use approval. Industrial areas will be a permitted use, and then it will also be a permitted use subject to site plan review on all municipal properties, municipal-owned properties. The theory being, and again, we'll show you another map later of where all the municipal properties are in the township, is that it would give wireless providers a broad canvas to locate and site needed wireless infrastructure. And what kind of prompted the theory on that is the areas that the wireless carriers are really targeting right now. One is the Independence Park / Cherry Hill Village area. All three carriers, Verizon, T-Mobile, AT&T, are interested in that area. T-Mobile's interested in areas along kind of the center part of the township. Here at the Township Hall, down towards Griffin Park, even some areas towards the northeast parts of the township. Also, by making permitted uses on the municipally owned properties, it provides an opportunity for the township to kind of control and drive a little bit whether a tower or infrastructure is appropriate in a given area. Since you are the owner of the property, since you are the owner of the property, you will have the ability to say yay or nay, whether you think that's an appropriate location or not. The other part about it too is it's a potential revenue source for the township, which I'll get more into in a moment. And then the types of areas we're talking about, it can be parks, it can be golf courses, it can be township facilities, other township-owned properties, as the township owns various properties around the community that are tax reverted or whatever the case may be. And then the other part of the new ordinance too is that it will include a more extensive section on small cells, and that'll be in parallel with the state statute and federal regulations. So getting back to the whole issue about making the towers permitted uses on municipal property, is the next item that we would recommend is preparing and publishing an RFP to bring on board what we could call a preferred tower developer or tower developers. And these can be one or two companies, whatever the township would choose. Our recommendation would probably be to do multiple companies, because the different tower companies have different master agreements with the wireless providers. You want to make sure that you have the major wireless providers covered so that the door would be open for all of them to come to the community. Sort of the benefits of this in our mind is that it would promote an orderly and controlled process for tower development. Again, you're driving where the towers can go, where you think they'd be appropriate. It will allow you to work with and develop a set of rules and regulations that could be used repeatedly, as opposed to trying reinventing the wheel every time a tower company or wireless provider came to town wanting to put up a new infrastructure. Would also allow us to establish a standardized economic model. You'd be cost certainty for both for the township and for the tower company / wireless provider, because there would be a rent schedule or whatever the economic model would be set up. And different tower companies have different proposals that they do for this type of a project. It can be regularly rent-based, it can be based on revenue received from their tenants and that sort of thing. That could all be hashed out in an RFP. It would allow you to develop a consistent and efficient process and timely process, so that if someone did want to come and build a tower, instead of dealing with it for years, they get it done in less than a year. It takes every bit of a year to develop a cell site, just because of all the regulations that they have to go through to get approvals to build, zoning aside. It allows us to develop, we hear a lot of talk about developing public-private partnerships today. This model would allow the township to develop a rapport and good working relationship with a certain tower developer or tower developers, as well as the wireless providers. It just makes for a beneficial process and relationship building between the business community and the township. Part of this too, we would encourage the township to consider development of public Wi-Fi capabilities in certain areas of the township. We did bring a company in to demonstrate what that could look like, particularly in the Cherry Hill Village gathering space / Preservation Park, Heritage Park, Independence Park, other high traffic and gathering locations. And the reason being that when events are going on in those particular areas, there is a lot of wireless traffic. In theory, the police department would probably love to see cameras and such at Heritage Park when Liberty Fest is going on. Or if there's an event going on in Cherry Hill Village, same thing. People want to be on their phones and Facebooking with people and doing Instagram and all that sort of thing when an event's going on. So there's definitely benefit to considering that, and we'd be happy to bring in the developer that we brought in again to meet with the township and talk about the ideas. They've done a very rough idea of what something could look like in Cherry Hill Village, but that's something to go into more down the road. Right now, the conversation is more about the tower development and the wireless ordinance and things of that nature. If you want to pop open the maps, we'll show. While Steve's trying to do that, I'll be happy to take any questions you might have.
So Steve's pulling up the maps now so you guys can see the coverage of the different carriers.
Oh, that'll be great.
But now the ones, the trunks that you're talking about, you have major trunks of fiber going down Michigan Avenue and Ford Road now, correct? And who owns those?
Pardon me, I'm sorry.
Who owns the major trunks going down Ford and Michigan Avenue?
AT&T has cable or fiber. Crown Castle has fiber, which they're in the process of selling to a company called Zayo. There's a company called 123Net that has fiber along Michigan Avenue. Windstream, whatever they're called now, they have fiber. Lumen.
And then Sheldon Road, there's a big trunk also, correct?
Yes, so it's various, and you can see this is a map of all the fiber and cable in the township. The different colors, the purple you see along Ford Road and Michigan Avenue, those are the major trunk lines that we've seen. All the light blue, the orange, that's primarily cable / copper that's going into the residential areas of the community. And like I said, that map will change. Once Ripple gets established and Easy gets established, you'll see those colors change, so. But percentage-wise, as you can see, there's not much fiber in the township, other than along the major trunk lines. So, and that's because, and primarily that's because the major players here for years have been Comcast and AT&T, and they didn't invest that kind of money in our infrastructure. I think they're being forced to change that dynamic a little bit now because companies like Ripple and WOW are putting fiber in and making it more cost-effective. I mean, Ripple's price point for their home internet service for gigabit service is less than $90 a month for a lifetime contract, which is much cheaper than Comcast and AT&T. So, but getting back to your question about where the major trunk lines are, any one of those companies will work with any developer that comes along and wants to get fiber to their new development. And I'm thinking particularly along Michigan Avenue, where if someone wants to come and build a high-tech industrial park or, some other kind of workspace or whatever, they would contact those companies directly to work out getting fiber to their development.
Well, businesses along Michigan did complain that they didn't get good coverage because they probably aren't on the fiber. But also, now DDA helped pay for this study, and they're concerned with Ford Road businesses. And a lot of businesses there, even along Canton Center, are saying they aren't getting good service.
So
Could you scroll the map down a little?
Is that-
Yeah.
What was the question?
Well, that's not showing the whole township, is it?
You want to scroll down? Yeah.
Can we see this
Broadband lines? on the
more
left?
south?
Yeah. Yes, just scroll down.
Along Michigan Avenue, please? There.
The key is a little hard to read.
Yep.
Could you share with the dark blue, the light blue, and the orange, or the copper color?
For ATT? Fiber AT&T.
Okay.
Comcast.
Comcast cable.
There's no service at the one above. Still George.
So this green along Michigan Avenue, you see here, this is US Signal. That's cable. The light blue that you see along here along Michigan Avenue, that's what's called CenturyLink. That's fiber.
A lot of the network that's going through your township is basically going from Southfield, the head ends in Southfield. That's US Signal, that's 123, that's pretty much everybody. AT&T's, Verizon, everybody's there. Where are they trafficking through? Through your township to Grand Rapids to Chicago. And they're going into downtown, Federal Avenue, Equinox Building. Those are the data centers that are and the edge of the internet, basically the carriers that have their public IP addresses start out with 1 digit or 2 digits. That's AT&T, that's Department of Defense, that's Apple Computer, Google, Oracle. They're all there, all sitting in that network. And what they're trying to do is get from Southfield through Grand Rapids. There's 2 different internet exchanges in both of those cities, trying to get to the larger exchange in Chicago. That's what Doug was referring to as far as trunk lines. That's big fiber, lots of strands. And they're also dealing with customers like Amazon to get their network to them, Lowe's, Home Depot, name the Fortune 500 companies that are in your township. That's their connectivity.
I think, if I may, putting things in context here as you're looking at that map, I know it's a little bit difficult for you to kind of zoom in to know.
Guys,
But one thing is for sure, as you look at that, one of the reasons why it's color coded is for you to, for certain things to jump out, right? So whether you're looking at the saturation of the color of the orange or the saturation of the color of the light blue, it tells you that here in Canton, there is an oversaturation of copper service to the homes, i.e., the likes of Comcast. Why does it matter? There's always a debate in terms of what's classified as a true broadband, and I'm not here to debate with Comcast or the likes of it whether they are actually feeding the residents based on what's classified as true broadband. The issue with coax or copper going to the homes is that many times, because of the nature of the need at home or in the homes here in Canton, for instance, this particular type of service doesn't meet the need. We saw that during COVID, where so many people are trying to get online. And yes, the likes of Comcast will always say, our service is enough, until your son in the basement starts to play a game while your other son is trying to log into a homework and things starts to bottle up. And one service that can always feed everybody is the fiber optic service. And we've said to all the ISPs here in Canton, do you have a plan for getting fiber optics to the homes? And the likes of Comcast will say, no, we can do what fiber will do. And federal government through FCC redefined what they classify as broadband as 100 up and 20 down, right? Is that where it is now, 100 up, 20 down, right?
100 and
120.
120.
20 megabits per second up and 100 down is what the FCC is considering the minimum standard for broadband.
And so with that, you realize instantly that the likes of AT&T, who have a lot of copper lines into the homes, they will weed themselves out because they don't provide service at that level. The highest level of service that AT&T has going into most of the homes here in Canton, based on UVerse service, I think that's what it is called, is way less than that, like 20 and 3, or maybe 12 and 3, something like that, 25 and 3, way less than that. It doesn't cut it for the needs at home. Comcast and WOW will say, because they're providing coax, that they can actually, this is an actual conversation I had with Comcast. They say, look, don't worry, we've demonstrated that through coax, we can pump out a gig in our lab. And I'm like, your lab is a controlled environment, it's not the home. They said, no, but this is what we do. How does it translate to the need in Canton here? If you see what's going on there, it means that they have a ton of monopoly. And people here in Canton are being charged an arm and a leg on a service that is subpar right now. And this is on the straight out broadband, right? So as we engage in this conversation, we have to keep things in perspective. This is on straight out broadband. Now we're gonna go into the other side of the conversation, which is on wireless, because we also have deficiencies in wireless, which Doug is gonna also show on the map. So whichever way you look at it, whether on the straight out broadband or on the wireless, you realize that telecommunication here in Canton, even though superficially it looks as if we are okay, we are really not okay. This evening Doug called me because he couldn't get in and his phone dropped. I called him back, it dropped. I called him back, it dropped. Yesterday, Madam Supervisor called me. I couldn't hear her. I was on Ford Road. I called her back, it dropped. And I know so many of us here have experienced that here in Canton. Drop calls everywhere. Why is that? And Doug is gonna go into that on wireless to explain to us why we're having that problem, part of it is, the issue of, not having enough towers and all that. But also, part of it also speaks to the essence of the wireless companies transitioning to 5G without having the necessary infrastructure that supports 5G for the entire Canton Township. And so I just want to put that perspective in terms of the conversation we're having today as we move forward. So thanks, Doug.
Yeah, yeah, if you want to show all the maps, they're kind of eye-opening.
So now, these are the maps that show wireless coverage in the township. This is open with all three major carriers' 4G service in the community. As you can see, the township is pretty well covered. There's no holes there, things of that nature.
Could you zoom out a little? There you go. So 4G is what we've had for a while.
4G is basically what's used to make cell phone calls, basic data, that things of that nature. We've evolved into what they talk about now as 5G, and there's two different layers of 5G.
So 5G is what they're all moving to, and it's a shorter wavelength, and their towers don't reach as far as they do with 4G.
So this is T-Mobile with their 5G. As you can see, there are some gaps in the service here down in the southern part of the township, some areas in the middle of the township, and that's what they call their 35.3, which is 35 megabits up or 3 up and 35 megabits down, which is okay. That allows you to do your Facebook and things of that nature on your phone. But as we've known, our wireless devices now are basically handheld computers. So we're doing much more with that, and that's why it's prompted them to get to the much more technologically advanced 5G.
See the holes you have, Summer? Over by your house. In her coverage.
As would you have T-Mobile?
Yeah.
High-speed 5G, which is the latest technology. More holes here and a lot of it's down in the southern part of the township. But there are some areas over on the eastern part of the township.
Yeah. Remember right. Let's see what we got.
They have a lot of gaps throughout the township. And again, as you see down in the southern part of the township, and I think that kind of follows along with how the development trends have gone. More housing down in the southern part of the southwest part of the township, Cherry Hill Village, things of that nature. So you can see where the gaps are in their services and things of that nature. And again, it's important to keep in mind that we have to be careful how we use the word coverage. Like I said, if we just purely talk about cell phone coverage, we have more than enough coverage. It's more about, again, capacity and being able to have high-quality service in the, not only the commercial areas, but the residential areas of the township.
Anecdotally, I can tell you that when we first started working with the township, I was on Verizon's network. And in the conference room near Madam Supervisor's office, I had one bar. I could make a phone call, didn't go off to the internet very well. That was with Verizon. I changed recently after longer than you can imagine with one carrier. I changed to AT&T. Right now, in your boardroom, I keep toggling between standard 5G with 2 bars and 3 bars of LTE, which is 4G. That's real world. Okay? I can see your wireless internet for the building, but just shutting that off and going cellular, I have 2 bars from AT&T, standard 5G, and before I only had 1 bar, 4G with Verizon, your supervisor's house.
Yeah, that's our phone system.
Doug talks about gaps. You know,
Bars 5G.
all of you can relate to the fact that there is somewhere in this building,
Oh, that's true.
there is somewhere in this township, multiple places where your network doesn't work. That's why, as Doug was saying, our work with site developers, our work with the carriers is pointing out the density of the population in your township and the need that is still there, even though, you know, from a marketing standpoint, the 3 carriers will color in the whole map and say, we're covered everywhere. Yes,
Township
to make a
properties,
phone call.
government properties.
But the phone call used to be the primary use of the phone, where now the data is the primary use of the phone. And the phone call just occasional. You're texting, you're looking up information, you're doing banking, you're doing all the things that you would on a laptop on a portable device, whether it be a tablet or a phone. Notice I don't mention one manufacturer over there. They're all having the same problem because they have data needs, you have data needs as their client, your constituents have data needs, and their density of coverage is impacted. That's where we go. Doug?
So the map that I have up here now is the map of all the public parcels or municipal-owned parcels throughout the township. That's all the blue highlighted properties. As you can see, there's properties all over the township. So in theory, there would be places wherever they wanted to develop a wireless tower, wireless facility that would fit their needs. Obviously, there are towers near some of these places already, but in other places, not so much. You know, you see the southwest part of the township down there, down by Independence Park, and that, obviously, you have a lot of public space there. Up in Cherry Hill Village, you have the dog park area. You have all the parks throughout the township. A lot of those little pockets that you see throughout the township are probably some tax-reverted properties. I know there's one down on Lots Road down there along 275 that's owned by the township, that I know there's been interest by a wireless carrier to put a tower there, or a facility of some sort. So again, by making municipal properties a permitted use for towers, again, subject to site plan review, it's just not they can't go throw up a tower. There is still a process they will have to go through. But by making those properties available, Canton is telling the wireless industry that we are friendly towards these. We want to see development, but we want to see it orderly. We want to see it so that it benefits not only our residents, but also the township as a whole. So there's a multifaceted reason for doing it this way, I believe. There's, you know, as we show you, that there's definite needs that they have here in the township. I can tell you for certain that the wireless carriers don't build cell sites willy-nilly. They it costs anywhere from $300,000 to $500,000 to build a cell site. And that's just the capital cost before you get into rent expense and that sort of thing. So if there's not a customer demand for service in a given area, they're not going to be coming looking for a site. which is contrary a little bit to back in the early days, again, of wireless, when they just wanted to get a network established. But now they're much more selective about how they build sites. In fact, all three wireless carriers are going through major cost-cutting initiatives these days, particularly in rent expense and things of that nature. That's their single biggest expense every year is rent expense, which is another thing that would help promote the plan that we're talking about here is they are looking for cost certainty. They are looking for reasonable terms that aren't so outlandish as what they agreed to back in the day. So again, you get back into the concept of public-private partnership, and I think it benefits all sides to develop a relationship like that. In the early days of wireless, there was a lot of headbutting going on between the wireless industry and the communities, fighting over towers and zoning and things of that nature. And that just wastes time and money for everybody. So it just, given the needs of the community, given the trends that we see in business and technology, and things that the township has on the table to develop high tech in the community and making it more friendly for a younger generation and people who are interested in high tech or technology friendly services. I think the model we're talking about for wireless development in the community makes sense for Canton.
So where we are is we're looking at a couple things. We know that towers want to come into Canton, and what do we do in terms of we want to make sure that wherever they go, that it's not in the middle of a neighborhood, right? We have to look at how the public reacts to where a tower is going to be. Another thing is if towers are there, that they leave space for public safety in case we need some repeaters for our 800 megahertz radios at some point. Another thing is what kind of revenue can we generate from this? So if we have them come somewhere, they're going to rent space on these towers to different companies, different organizations. How does maybe the township says, okay, if you go on our piece of property, we get a certain percentage of whatever comes in. So there's kind of two different thoughts here. We had an internal meeting, and the team can comment on what I'm saying. We had an internal meeting kind of looking at, okay, here's what properties we own. We've looked at the holes in the maps. Where do we see these holes, and what property do we have nearest those holes that might suffice? So, and the team can talk about some of that details, but then Doug is saying, on the other hand, we should just do an RFP and let them suggest where the towers go versus us guiding them. So there's kind of two different schools of thoughts here. So just to start, if you wouldn't mind, I know Joe and the team here was in that meeting where we discussed where we should have them. You want to kind of give a summary of that, Joe, about what we came up with?
Can everybody hear me? Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, I'm just pulling up the document here. Yeah, so what we wanted to do was kind of set some criteria to kind of make some of these decisions through. And we want to kind of offer that as like a starting point in this conversation about where some of these towers might locate in the township. And so some of the factors that we came up with were, as Anne Marie said, making sure we're filling gaps in coverage throughout the township, making sure that we're serving the greatest amount of residents that need coverage in particular areas of the township, taking into account concerns of businesses throughout the township that may need broadband access, looking at our master plan and our future development map. And so thinking about where development might go, where new businesses might go, where new industries might go without the township, and thinking about where some new towers might be located. And then, as Anne Marie stated, taking into consideration some of the needs that the municipal government has. For example, public safety, redundancy, throughout the township in coverage, schools. Right, making sure schools have redundancy in the coverage that they need for public safety purposes. Meters, making sure our water meters are, talking to the township the right way. So these were some of the things we discussed, but if there are other ideas, other criteria that you think, we ought to kind of think about and discuss and kind of run decisions through, definitely open to discussion on that.
Anything else we might have missed?
I was really curious to hear if there have been any conversations about the use of cable and whether we're seeing that people are actually in these residential homes, whether people are actually using them, and whether we need to remove some of the cables that go through, or is it worth to still have there?
Let you answer that.
So your question is regarding the use of the current cable coming, like coax cable coming into a residence?
Yes.
Okay. So, and I wanted to address this when Victor was talking about this. From a strategy standpoint, and I've gleaned as much as I can, as much as they're willing competitively to tell us, AT&T, Comcast, Xfinity, WOW, all of them. So as far as moving it, that's on them, as far as moving the cables around or getting fiber to a certain area. The one thing I can tell you is up where I live in Saginaw, it's Charter Spectrum. Here it's Comcast, Xfinity. What they're trying to do to maintain and utilize their coax network, what's coming in your cable TV and internet from that standpoint, they're trying to move now the nodes so there's more nodes closer together so they can then on that same medium, that same coax cable, deliver you a higher broadband. That's like a 250 meg up, 500 meg down. They're calling it powered by fiber. Well, of course it's powered by fiber, but what they're trying to do is bring their fiber closer to the node and have more nodes so that at your residence or anyone in your neighborhood, they can compete on that coax medium with fiber optic. They really can't, but they're gonna market that until they are forced to basically deliver a fiber product. That buys them time. If they can get you 250, 500, you're not apt to, to quit Comcast and go to Ripple or somebody else that offers fiber. AT&T in turn is also making a play. They spent throughout the state in a lot of townships, Madam Supervisor will tell you, MTA talked about them putting their UVerse, their VRAD beige boxes in the neighborhoods. Well, now from a strategy standpoint, they want to remove those and in place fiber nodes so they can deliver fiber to the home, because my understanding is by either 2027, the end of 2027, or the end of 2029, they're abandoning their copper network, AT&T and anybody that has it. So they need to move from that platform to fiber optic. Right. Okay, so that's their play, but there's a lot of money they have to put into it, okay? Where the Ripples and those, those companies are using either grant or private equity money to push their fiber into the homes first. So this is very competitive. And to Victor's point, everybody wants to win in this one. They move from 3 up, 25 down to 20 up and 100 down. And the people that are winning are the folks that are going 500 up, 500 down, 1,000 up, 1,000 down, or as much as we've been told, they can, 123 net, for example, in the areas where they are, they can deliver as much as 6 gig up and down. That's 6,000 meg up and down to your house. That's not residential, but they're saying that that's coming. Okay. But usually it's 500, a gig or 2 gig is what most of these fiber providers are, offering.
So you're asking, do we have evidence of people switching? Or is it, and then removing cable, is that what you're asking?
Yes. I mean, but that was very helpful context.
Okay, all right, that's.
Not very technical, so.
No, that's
so-
fine.
Well,
Yeah.
And I think it comes down to where you are technical is the device that's right in front of you,
You're right.
okay? 20 years ago, that device was not in front of you for any of us, in most cases. And what's happening now is we're becoming, you look around the table at how many people have them next to them, almost everyone. That's because it's becoming an integral part of everyone's existence. When we first started talking to Madam Supervisor, the one thing that came to the top, and I made the statement, Canton Township is looking at becoming a connected community. That's the terminology. That's fiber. I mean, point being, we don't care how you deliver it, just deliver the most to our residents and the best competition, because that's what drives price down. Options for the residents,
Well,
so.
it's important to note too that fiber and wireless are not mutually exclusive. They need each other. A wireless facility needs fiber to it to as what they call their backhaul. So the wireless carriers are looking where fiber's at also. So there's a need for both. It's not one or the other. Now, how you choose to have that delivered to you, that is one or the other. That's your choice. So, but there are more people from what we were led to believe, and we've not, to the extent that the wireless carriers and the cable companies will share information with, which they're not so open about. T-Mobile, for example. T-Mobile is really pushing its broadband wireless service now, and that's probably what's driving a lot of their desire to get facilities built here in the township. Verizon is just now starting to get to that now. I've not heard so much about AT&T. AT&T is really tight-lipped about anything they're doing. But, so you will see more different ways to get broadband to your house, whether it's through fiber, whether it's through wireless, whether it's through satellite. And, to be honest, I think you'll see the satellite more out in the rural areas than you will in the cities, but it's an option. So,
Doug,
ju-
Doug,
just
if
to-
I may sort of expound on something with regards to the wireless needs, right? So let me give you an example. A while ago, a few months ago, I did call AT&T and I said to AT&T, I need service at my house that can, give me broadband service level. They say, oh yeah, we have a product that is called XYZ. It's wirelessly delivered, right? I got excited, but because I knew that's baloney. And so I signed up, they sent me the wireless box. They say all you need to do is to turn it on, wait for it to latch on to the nearest tower, and then the service, because again, see how it connects? It finds the tower, latches onto the tower, and then pushes your traffic, right? I knew I was in a dead spot. And so I brought in the service, turned it on, called the customer service. I said, it's not, showing me green light, which means that it made the connection. He said, can you go to the highest point in your house? I said, okay, fine. I took the box, went to the highest point in my house, did the same thing, nothing. He said, okay, let's call the next engineer and just stay on the phone. And they were doing their thing. And I was sitting over there laughing to myself and like, yeah, right. You would never see a tower around me because I know it doesn't exist. But they're selling the service, all right? And so not just AT&T, the same thing happened to my brother. He signed up for T-Mobile, offering the same type of thing. So you have the ISPs offering this service wirelessly with the assumption that they will deliver, but the infrastructure is not there. And that's really what we're saying here, that the infrastructure is not there to deliver the high-capacity kind of service that we're talking about. And so, in essence, all this conversation is based on the fact that we know that we have a huge need that needs to be met. How we address it is up to us.
I will, and it's always important with my 24 years in the past in township government, let's at least start off with complimenting a township when they actually, this is not something, and Madam Supervisor, you will see this when you go to MTA, they're all trying to get to this where you are, because they're having the same issues in their jurisdictions. It's two things. How do you deal with the site survey, or the cell tower providers, the carriers, and the needs of your constituent, which overrides the needs of, the commercial side of it. They want their residents to be happy and have something so that they're not in a situation like Victor, although we find it extremely humorous that you knew what the answer to the question was and you got their equipment to show them the answer to their question. I did want to add too, from the fiber side, you mentioned T-Mobile. You've probably seen on Facebook and other places, T-Mobile fiber. So they're now coming into the game. I've mentioned to Doug that my belief is you're going to see AT&T, Verizon, and T-Mobile all start building out their fiber networks and acquiring these small providers, the Ripples, the Omnis, the Easy, what's the other one called? Easy Fiber, Wow. They're going to start, why would a private equity company spend $1.5 billion to buy Wow if they weren't going to turn around and sell them in the future to get back their investment and make a profit? Because at the end of the day, with all the people we're going to be dealing with, that we are dealing with, they have return on investment. ROI is the main reason they do any of this. So what you're doing, I guess the point is way ahead of a lot of townships your
In
size.
your township, you guys have taken a different approach. You basically have your own loop, correct?
Yeah.
You're in the downtown area.
Well, and Ripple and Omni, I could do an anecdotal story. Ripple and Omni Fiber both came into Saginaw Charter Township. Okay? Both of them are private equity funded, no grant money, nothing. They all that Wall Street money coming in to put fiber through the neighborhoods. Okay? And we have a township that has about 43,000 people. They're so ginned up to get fiber to the customer and win that customer, like Victor or Madam Supervisor or any of you, that Omni and Ripple literally hit each other's fiber trying to get through the neighborhood. Okay? Now that tells you, that's from a township level, that's what's in store. And the plan is to hit everybody in this, because most jurisdictions in the state are townships.
Yeah.
They're going to push this in the next 4 years. So they're all running as fast as they can to get into your township and every other township that is, and they start with the heavy, I guess the term isn't urban township, it's populated townships. So they're going to go where the target is rich, and then they move out from there. So,
Okay, very good.
there you go.
So I don't know if Dave or you guys want to kind of give some highlights of what 5 areas we found might be a good spot, or what we mapped out together? You want to just list those quickly, or?
Yes, so in that discussion that we had last month or a month and a half ago, we kind of split the township into 4 quadrants, so southwest, northwest, southeast, northeast. For the southwest part of the township, we found that the dog park or Independence Park would serve as good locations. For the northwest part of the township, we found that, I apologize if I say it wrong, Zibowis, or the Kenyon Cemetery, which is at Ridge and Guide Roads. For the southeast part of the township, we had 4 different locations. So there's a parcel at Palmer and 275, a parcel on lots and where the railroad tracks meet. I'm sorry, there's actually 3. And then potentially fire station number 4. And then lastly, the northeast part of the township, we're recommending potentially the water storage parcel.
So there's a couple things. And Doug, you can talk about why you think it might be, you had a different thought of this, but another thing is that the community, right? We saw what happened in, was it Wyandotte, where they threw an antenna on top of the school, and everybody, got very upset because it was on top of a school. So wherever we're going to think about putting these, we have to think about the residents. So do we have, I mean, obviously, we will put the study session out there, but how do we, wherever we decide or whatever the RFP comes back, how do we sell this to the residents too? How do we work with the residents and saying, okay, these are the 5 spots we think we're gonna go with? You know, have maybe a community forum or something? I mean, what are your thoughts about that? Because towers, you know, when they go up, you know, of course, people get upset at first, but then after a while, you don't see them. You know,
So can I say one thing real quick? The situation in Wyandotte, I would be hesitant to compare anything to that because there was a lot of other issues that went with that. First of all, I'll never promote putting a cell site near an elementary school, whether you believe in the whole health hazard thing or not. It's just it's bad PR. It's bad. It's just perception is bad. It's bad optics. So in my days, and just for those of you who don't know me that well, my background is in the wireless industry. I worked for Verizon for many years. I oversaw the site acquisition for towers and that sort of thing. So that's kind of how I know about the battles that have gone on and that sort of thing. It's just not, now, it's a totally different sentiment when you go on a high school facility. And I joke all the time. I say, I think because parents generally feel that their kids' brains are fried by that time anyway. But the elementary school thing is bad. Plus the Wyandotte thing, that was kind of done in the dark of night. That agreement was done without any public hearings, without any, and it was done in like 2017, 2018. T-Mobile never built the site. And then all of a sudden they show up one day and build the site and everyone went nuts. So there's a lot of bad things that happened with that whole situation. But to your point, Madam Supervisor, I caution against dictating where towers can go, rather than just making the parcels available. Like one of the examples I heard mentioning is potentially a location of fire station number 4. Well, fire station number 4 is right near an existing tower. You're not gonna get someone else to build another tower there, most likely because there's gonna be capacity on that tower. My sentiment, and I believe, you know, and Steve's too, is, again, they don't build these towers and facilities haphazardly anymore. They go where the need and where their customers are demanding service. So we can designate these areas, but maybe that's not where the customer demand is. And that's part of what you can use the map for that's been developed is you can see if they come in with a cell site or a request to put up a cell site, you can see, okay, it's not the be all and end all in terms of information, but you can see if they're being sincere in what they're asking for, if there's a true need in that location. Plus, again, with the township owning these parcels and the way the wireless ordinance can be developed, there can be all kinds of policies and procedures put in place to make sure the development is compatible with the surrounding area if need be. Whether it's, you know, if it's next to a residential area, it has to be 500 feet away from the nearest residentially zoned property or used property. You know, things of that nature. And then at the end of the day, because you own the property, if you can simply say, we just don't think it's a good fit in that property. Now, that's not to say that they won't go out to the next private property owner nearby and come in with that site. And the ordinance, you can't say no entirely. I mean, yes, they have to go through the process and there may be a battle, but you can't say no. And my feeling is, if they're going to do that, why not let the township get the benefit of that facility? Again, this can be, no, it's not only a service thing, it can be a revenue producer for the township as well. Just my opinion. You know, at the end of the day, you folks will decide what you feel is best for the community, but that's kind of where we're at with it. And we feel that what we're recommending allows you to still maintain control and really dictate where they go, but at the same time, allowing the market forces to kind of drive it too.
Okay, yeah.
Mostly a comment. Just thank you for the presentation. Appreciate the work that's been put into this. that being said, I just want to make sure that, if people are watching this at home, that they understand that what was presented after the, sort of where we're at type information were recommendations. And nothing is set in stone at this point. And so this is good information for the board to consider. But as we've all, I think, have heard several times tonight, it is our job to meet the needs of the community, not necessarily meet the needs of the providers. And to answer Joe's question, and I'm not sure that if these have been considered or not, but I think we need to look at environmental impacts, good or bad, like, I don't know. I'm not knowing much about these, but are there opportunities for, I don't know, solar panels or anything like that to be considered? And then also health considerations, perhaps educational considerations as well. So.
Is there any indication from anybody in terms of what you think about just doing an open RFP and see where they come back at, or us kind of guiding them more?
I think we should guide personally, but.
What'd you say?
I said I think we should give some guidance.
Yeah, I would, Michael.
Oh.
No, I was just gonna say, I would agree with that. I think we should give some guidance based on what our priorities are. Thank you to Doug and your team for providing us with the maps. I think that will be very helpful as we think through that. The information or the priorities that Joe mentioned are important. I would also say, like, what is also important to public safety, where they may have gaps in coverage that they may see a need. I would be interested in that information, and I would like for us to develop some guidance and maybe submit some RFPs based on, what this board thinks, or solicit RFPs based on what this board thinks.
I just want to say something real quick addressing the public safety concerns or issues or whatever. Our recommendation too would be if you choose to go out for an RFP for preferred tower developer or developers, any agreement that you would come to with that, I would make it a requirement that whatever towers they build would have space on it for public safety equipment or municipal use. Because in fact, Patrick and I were talking last night. One of the things, I heard people talking about the water meter.
Water meters.
But the other things that are now being put on towers that are operating wirelessly are air monitoring equipment. So there's multiple, I hesitate to say just public safety as opposed to just governmental usage is really what should be allowed for in that situation. And again, by putting that out there, it may be another avenue for the township to have those facilities up and running for them so you can facilitate whatever equipment your public safety department or DPS needs and things of that nature. So, yeah, it gets back to the whole idea of the public-private partnership.
Yeah, my motivations in this are less about making money and less about, and traditionally I didn't tend not to I don't tend to prioritize the needs of the business community. I think the business community does a good job of advancing their needs. With township-owned property, I think what I do find compelling is the public safety argument. That is, and to that end too, given the way things changed during and after COVID, the way the economy is today, cell phones are not a novelty, and the internet is not a novelty, right? It's like people are running businesses from their home. People are constantly working, and so in order for Canton to be a place where professionally minded folks want to live, we've got to be a place where they can be connected. So I do see a public benefit in that regard. But I think for me, the public safety angle is by far the most compelling. I will never forget when previous boards in the early 2010s, I think, were considering allowing a cell phone tower to go up on the east side of the township. And I think the boardroom got packed with over 200 or 300 residents. And there was a lot of time and energy and money that got spent in advancing that, and it just died because of severe public backlash. And there was a period of time where we were entertaining the idea of putting a tower in Heritage Park. And I remember saying, let's not put too much staff time and energy into this if we're going to buckle to political pressure eventually. Our time is precious. Let's spend it on other things, right? Instead of investing it, So I think if it's central to an integral public safety function, and if we truly do value this idea of being a connected community, and that this is a public good that we're going to get involved in, just like roads and trash and water, then we have to be willing, obviously, to work with the community when pushback comes. Because I got to tell you, like right away, hearing Zimbabwe as an option, I'm like, well, that's a nature preserve. We established that as a nature preserve, so it wouldn't be developed. Now we're like, here we are 2 years later talking about putting a cell phone tower on there. Awesome. And not everyone's motivated by the exact same things. Some people are like, I don't want to have a tower in my backyard. I don't want to look at it. Or I think 5G causes brainworm. Who knows? People, the varying degrees of people's value systems as to why they want something somewhere as opposed to another. And so I think, if we're going to go this route, there needs to be overwhelming support on the board. There needs to be kind of an understanding that we're willing to do this. And so that's why I do think this idea of an RFP could get, it's fine if it's like, okay, they're out there telling us where they want to put their stuff up, but I do like the idea of us looking at the public safety gaps and us kind of directing that conversation. I think that feels to me more manageable, and I think it gives us the ability to handle public backlash. And it's a lot different when you're like, the fire department can't get there. The calls get dropped in that area. People could die. This isn't about being able to buy stuff on Amazon here. This is about pulling people out of burning buildings. It's a different story. It's about getting to a school if there's an active gunman. That's a different story. There's definitely a public benefit in that. And that doesn't get as confusing as things like, oh, I can't stream a high definition video on my computer. So okay, I don't care. I don't care if internet's slow.
Now, I did had to ask public safety to come, and they called me before, and they said, we just want to give you a summary of what's happened. They said they have cell phone coverage complete in the township, and they also said dispatch is also complete. They said the only issues they have are in buildings, which is what we're looking at, like, repeaters in basements or repeaters in the high school and things like that. So they said, we don't really think we're worried about anything right now. They said, of course, in the future, we might need to put a repeater on a tower, but they say as of right now, they don't have any issues. So I just wanted to let you know what they said. But they would be an integral part of this. But Diane also, for water meters is a big one.
Yeah, well, yeah, great presentation, thank you. And I think this is great conversation, and like Kate had mentioned to the residents, this is the beginning of conversation. And I think it's something that's important that we guide as we're learning more about it. We right now, now that we have the water meter reads, we can't read all of them. So we have to send the guys out to do the work that we were hoping we would be able to ping, in my office. So things are changing so quickly, and with public safety, because it is an issue. And in the future, we don't know what else they're going to need. So I do think this is a serious thing that we do have to look at. For public safety and even air quality, that's a great idea, having that on the tower. There's certain things that are going to be very helpful going into the future. So I think this is a great beginning of conversation, and I'm glad we're having this.
Yeah. Just I don't know if this is working or not, but to piggyback on the air quality monitoring, that I think is a good idea, and I think that is an example of something that could have a positive environmental impact as far as at least giving us knowledge, because the closest air quality monitoring site that feeds into the database for the state is in Ypsilanti, and then the next closest one, I think, is either Livonia or Dearborn. So there's nothing for Canton specifically, except for at my house.
I think it's important to emphasize, and I can't remember, Mike, if you said it, or if Summer, if you said it, that this is far more than about someone buying something on Amazon or being on Facebook or whatever. There are so many different applications now for wireless technology, whether it's public safety, whether it's public services, people working, both from home and from offices. So the whole connectivity thing, trust me, Canton's not the only one having this discussion. It's a countrywide discussion. I'm pleased being a Canton resident that you are talking about this in depth. Some don't even know where to begin. But it is important. It's not, like, again, it's not about being able to game or things of that nature. Yes, that's a part of it. Recreation is a part of it. But there's so much more that goes into it these days than just those basic things of when we first got access to the internet. My 2 cents.
No, I appreciate you did a great job. I don't know, I can ask the residents if they have any questions, if you guys don't have any. Yeah.
I just want to bring this up. I think I would be remiss if I didn't. As a member of the Planning Commission, I serve on the Planning Commission with Doug. And I just want people at home, I'm more familiar with this because, we've talked about this on the Planning Commission, about potential conflicts of interest with us working with Doug on this project and him sitting on the Planning Commission. And I just want folks to know that there are guardrails in place and, making sure that people recuse themselves on specific votes, and that it is something that we do take seriously in this township. And so I just wanted to mention that. And Doug, I didn't know if you want to add anything to that, or Patrick, but I just thought it was important to mention.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Summer. I've talked about this before at Planning Commission, that if there's any discussion about a specific project or anything that involves about wireless or whatever, I'm happy to recuse myself from any vote on the Planning Commission that our council feels I should. And I kind of think I lean towards the very conservative side of that whole thing anyway. I'll ask the question whether I should recuse myself before somebody tells me I should. But yeah, I'm very conscious of that, and I have no gain one way or the other from any development that happens in the township or anything of that nature. I'm simply here working as a consultant / advisor to the township, and don't experience any, in my opinion, any conflict of interest in that regard.
Thank you.
And Patrick, I don't know, do you want to give kind of an update on the ordinance and what you're changing about it along here?
Sure, thank you. For the last several months, the Planning Commission has been reviewing ordinance text, looking at modern standards of other communities. And the current wireless standards that we have in the zoning ordinance are pretty thin, and they haven't been updated in several decades. And with updates to technology and to state and federal law, it's a little past due to update some of our standards, which are somewhat boilerplate in terms of some of the screening requirements and the compound facility regulations. In terms of what we're looking to achieve with coverage is, right now with the zoning districts, wireless towers are only allowed as special land uses in the light industrial and general industrial districts, which we have along Michigan Avenue and in some of the northeastern parts of the community. So those are some areas of the community that have some of the better coverage just because towers are possible. In some cases, towers are located elsewhere. And in the regulations, we have expanding that as special land uses in the additional following districts: the rural agricultural, the rural estate, the rural residential, and the R1 district. And those are districts that have minimum lot sizes of at least 1 acre. They tend to be more rural, and they cover a lot of areas within the community that would be eligible for a private landowner to apply if they met the standards. And as we had discussed, we have another provision in the proposal that would have towers as permitted land uses on Canton Township municipal property, subject to approval by the municipality and subject to township and public use of that tower. Because if they are proposed to be on township property as permitted uses, again, subject to discretionary approval by the township, those towers should provide public benefit to the community by way of public use. So public safety, public utilities, anything that is township IT related where there's a need, and if there's any other public use like air quality monitoring that we can fit on the tower, then that would be important as well. So in terms of the Planning Commission's work, we've had several meetings so far. Our most recent meeting was on December 15th, a few weeks ago, and we talked about some of the most recent revisions in the draft ordinance to cell towers, as well as some new language that we're including in a different part of the ordinance for small cell wireless facilities. In 2018, the state of Michigan adopted some law that impacted small cell wireless facilities and made them permitted in many areas throughout the state, notably along public rights-of-way. So what we're also trying to achieve with these ordinance amendments is to put in provisions for small cell wireless facilities that catch up with state law and include provisions where we're able to regulate, which is not a lot, but there are some substantial areas in the community that we can't have regulations for small cell wireless facilities. So at the same time as the wireless towers, we want to also be exploring the small cell wireless facilities. And the last thing that I'll mention is with the Planning Commission's work on this and the several meetings that they've had, all of the Planning Commission packets and the draft ordinances are online in those meeting packets. So we can review those anytime, and then any questions we get from the public or from carriers, we're happy to discuss.
Any questions for Patrick on the ordinance? Okay. All right. So before we do final, Victor or Dave or Patrick or Joe, do you have anything to add? Or so any questions from our audience? Okay, you can go up to here. Here's a microphone over here if you want. Just press the button.
So my excuse me, my question is, it looks kind of like it's twofold. So I can tell you from my personal experience, WOW did put fiber-driven cable. I live off Haggerty, and there was so much traffic between the apartments, my own home. We had no connectivity, none whatsoever. Now, since they fed the cable, the copper with the fiber, it's phenomenal. You just can't overload it. I mean, you could have 10 Zoom meetings going at once and just never overload it. So that technology does work.
Yeah, for sure. But
Right.
the thing is,
So-
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I see a twofold here. I see a twofold scenario that you guys have laid out pretty well. It's the wireless component versus the hardwire component. The hardwire will evolve to feed itself, as just in my experience, it was so crappy. Now it's just so great because they fed the fiber to the cable. I would caution on these towers that as the technology is evolving so fast, and this is a question for you guys because you're in the industry, do you see the equipment getting smaller
When you say equipment, what equipment are you?
that would be on the tower?
No, actually, what's going on the tower is getting larger.
Getting larger?
Yeah.
Right. So it's,
Because the intent, what they've discovered is, the early days when you saw towers built, you always saw a tower supported with a fairly large building at the base of it.
right.
Verizon, for example, their buildings typically were 12 by 30 feet, 36 feet. And the reason was all the radios that they had that drove a given cell site were in there, which were much bigger. And they also had generators in their buildings also. But they've since discovered that towers and cell sites work more efficiently by having the radio, i.e. the source, closer to the antennas. So they actually put these up on the towers now. Now, the radios are getting smaller, but they're also going up on the towers, which means putting more weight on the towers. The antennas are getting larger. So it's becoming a greater load on the towers. It's not getting, if you're thinking about, is it shrinking? Not per se, but
Is the tower getting taller?
no.
Height staying the same?
Towers, if anything, towers will get, I'm not going to say will get shorter as a whole, but with because things are more capacity driven now, they're looking to drive the signal in a more isolated area as opposed to a broad area of miles. Again, in the early days of wireless, you saw towers are getting built 200, 300, 400 feet tall because they were meant to cover miles. Now we're talking about maybe a square mile for a site, maybe less, depending upon what the population density is in that area. That can be done with a tower of maybe anywhere from 100 to 150 feet, maybe up to 200 feet. Just depend, again, geography drives a lot of it, density drives a lot of it, so I don't want to say that's it. It's not the be-all and end-all. So there's a lot of different factors that go into it. But I would not say towers are not going to get any taller than what you're seeing already.
So really, the biggest concern for this community is the towers, not the hardwire systems themselves, because they're not going to change anyway. It's a hardwired system on the utility poles or underground, correct?
What do you mean by change?
There's not going to be any visual changes. That system is going to continually evolve.
Yes.
Right, so what we're having the conversation tonight about here is basically the towers.
Right.
And how the
Right.
towers would impact the community.
Yes.
How about the power load for these towers? How about the DTE requirement or the municipal power load?
Getting less, actually. They're more efficient.
Getting less?
They are getting more efficient.
I think one of the things to address one concern, as Doug put up on the screen, you have 4G and then you have the various varieties of 5G that each of the carriers are offering, each one, giving more bandwidth to the data side. Phone calls are same, all the way across any of the different flavors. The next generation, 6G, well, I know we're already talking about 6G. What I've been reading about 6G is going to require, and that's why the conversation about small cells is pertinent now, because they don't have the distance. They can't push the 5 or the 6G signal as far, so they're going to be more dependent on small cells and macro sites to fill the gaps, because that's going to be literally the equivalent of wireless fiber to your device. Hundreds of megabits per second up and down.
So my final question would be, you mentioned the clock tower early on, which was one of the infancy structures that were for a cell tower up at what at that time was Don Massey Cadillac. Do you see the opportunity for aesthetic coverage for these towers?
Well, there's one on Orchard Lake Road that I drove by the other day. It had a bunch of branches.
We don't like to talk
No,
about that
but
one.
no, I want to say half that tree has fallen down.
I know.
It's like just a bare pole with a few twigs on it now.
So there are those opportunities, but I even caution against that because, and you can say I'm biased, whatever you want to say. I truly am a believer that when you put up a monopole like what's out here out next to the Township Hall, yes, you'll notice it when it first goes up. But after a while, it truly does blend into the background, just like utility poles did. Are there aesthetic opportunities? Yes, there are. It has to be in the right context, though.
Well, what comes to mind to me would be like the water tower that's painted in Plymouth Township versus the stark white one that's everywhere else. So something like that. So would there,
It's been done. I mean,
would there be an opportunity to color it? Would there be an opportunity
absolutely,
to
yeah,
accent it?
there's-
Would there be an
there's
opportunity
many-
to put some artwork with it, something like that?
Well,
And-
if you
and that's
want,
where
if
could really-
if you want an example of a cell tower that was treated as artwork, go to look at the cell tower that's at Domino's Farms.
Right.
And
I was just going to tell you that. That's a
I
phenomenal
was
tower.
involved in that project. That project's a pain in the you-know-what.
But, there was a standard that had to be met, and Mr. Monahan set the bar.
Yeah, that's that's few and far between. I mean, and
Well-
that tower doesn't accommodate multiple carriers.
But we can't say want to be initiative on one hand and settle for less on the other. There has to be a balance.
I'm not saying, you're right.
No, so what I'm saying is if these companies want to come in and look at these sites, maybe we should have some type of,
Oh, that'll be part of the RFP.
That'll be
I'll-
part,
Yeah, we'll
that'll
look-
definitely be part of the conversation.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Did,
Yeah, they're not gonna have
Chris, or-
carte blanche.
Did you have any questions?
right.
Any questions? Comment? Oh, you did?
One last,
Your brother did.
how do you see the impact of the satellite coming in on this? On the Starlink or something like
Yeah,
that?
again, I think it'll have a place in the business community, in our world.
Terminator.
I don't see mass adoption of it, like cell phone coverage and that, cell phone usage and that sort of thing.
You're more apt to see the density of coverage and the usage of satellite in places like Iowa, Nebraska, where
Montana.
Where there's
yeah,
no
they need-
fiber.
Yeah, they need coverage, they don't have fiber, and the infrastructure is too far apart. That's going to fill that gap.
Right. So
Here,
you,
you have a density of
so you
population.
see a whole new generation of, say, 10 years of new cell towers?
You will not get the build out of cell towers like we've had, say, 20 years ago. Companies are building maybe at most in a given, like say in Michigan, for example. Verizon's build plan this coming year might be 30 new cell sites across the state.
Yeah, they-
Whereas back in the early part of the 2000s, we were building as many as 200 in a given year. So
We might end up there.
again, they're very costly to build. So they're not going to just build them unnecessarily. It's going to be customer driven is really what it's going to be done. So do I see, the technology is going to be evolving, and we can't sit here and say what the technology is going to look like 20 years from now. But small cells play a role in this. Macro sites, the towers play a role in it. And fiber plays a role in it. It all works together. Truly it does. So it's going to be ever evolving. I can't say there's going to be a finite end to it.
But forward innovative thinking always takes place. What's good?
Thanks, Dan. All right, so thank you very much for the presentation. It was really good. We appreciate it, all the information. So we'll start working on an RFP with a lot of the input that we have already and determine our next steps. And as I said, as everybody has said here, this is just, a discussion. Nobody is saying it's going here and here. It's just a discussion, and Public Safety has assured me they have no gaps. They did that before this meeting. But is there anything else that the staff members want to say, or no? Joe or board members? All right, great. Well, thank you, everybody. Thanks for coming, and this will be recorded for people to watch. Okay, can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Motion made by Clerk Seeger, supported by Trustee Foster, very quickly. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Thank you. Good night, everyone. Happy New Year again.